Hey everyone, it's the Marketing Share podcast. I'm Alec and I'm here with my co-host Barb. Good
Hey,
morning,
how's it
Barb.
going?
I'm well. Let's introduce our guest today. This is a great topic of mine. It's one of my favorites. It's about messaging, which you and I both agree, messaging is kind of like, it's like the kernel of marketing. I always say that. It's the core. Like if you don't have good messaging, then
Right,
all of your other marketing is not going to be as good because it's just, you don't have anything to anchor to.
right, and
Um,
so many people shortcut it by going,
yeah,
"Can't you just write the copy?
I
Doesn't
know.
ChatGPT just write copy now?"
Right, right. So you do have to put that work in the messaging and understanding your ICP. So tell us about the guest we're talking today because he's all about this, right?
Right, great guess. Chris Silvestri is founder of Conversion Alchemy, and what's great about Chris is his background is a combination, are you ready? Of he's been an engineer, he's been UX design, which I absolutely love, and this behavioral psychology, and he blends the three of those together. And he's found a huge passion for copy, and not only copy, it's really messaging frameworks and how you create it from the foundation up, and how once you do it that way, your copy can have really important connections with people, and then obviously conversions. That's the key.
Yeah, that is. And it may sound like a very unique or different background, but when you think about it, those things coming together, it really works because, we aren't just writing to write, right? We are writing to try to convince someone to take some action, right? That's why I call it conversion, right? We got to convert. And so you combine the psychology aspect of it, but then the user design, understanding how people want to move on a web page, where they want to go to, where their eyes go to, that all comes into play. So it's pretty cool that he kind of brings that together and he can talk about all that.
Yeah, and he's ex-boss, so he understands, the touch point of how you're walking through that customer journey. So I
Yeah.
think he brings this unique skill set together for people who are really trying to get their messaging right and make sure it resonates with their audience.
Yes, agree. Okay, well, let's go interview Chris. Hey, good morning, Barb.
Hey, Alec, how's it going?
I am doing well. We are in studio today with a guest named Chris Silvestri. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, Barb, Alec, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I love this background. Honestly, I'm sitting here making your whole value proposition up as I'm thinking about it, right? So, your background is UX design, engineering, and behavioral psychology. What could be better for writing copy than that, right? Hey, walk us through a little bit about how you got started in the world of SaaS copywriting and, how that shaped your career and so forth.
Sure. So, yeah, it's a very weird, kind of interesting background because before jumping into marketing, I was a software engineer for 10 years, but it wasn't the typical software engineering, web development, or app development that you think about when you think about software engineering. It was basically in industrial automation. That was the sector. So, imagine automatic assembly machines, stuff that you see in factories, robots that basically take components and put them together, assemble them, and you have operators that control those machines. So a lot of my work was basically designing these very logical programs that, based on physical inputs like sensors, they activated certain movements on repeat circle. And I also used to design the human machine interfaces, the touchscreen displays that these operators needed to kind of command. And so a lot of my work back then still, which I actually thought about in retrospect, was a lot about putting myself in other people's shoes. How can I make it easier for them to operate these very complex, highly technical machines without injuring themselves, which was also very, very highly likely scenario in case I messed up something with the securities. And and so at the same time, I'm also a drummer. I've been playing drums for 25 years. So you would say, well, what does that have to do with this? Well, at the time, I kind of got tired of having to ask for time off 3 months in advance because I was also traveling the world to install these machines. And so I decided to start looking on about how to make money online. So I started looking at different things, tried blogging, I tried an Amazon FBA business, different various activities and skills, and then I stumbled on copywriting. And I was instantly fascinated by the psychology behind it, understanding how people make decisions, how you can move them to take a specific action just with words. And so I started studying that on the side, evenings, weekends. And when I moved from Italy to the UK for a series of other factors that I'm not going to get into, I basically decided to go full time. I left my job and I started first initially on Upwork doing very small projects. And then along the way, I met the founder at this agency that they were also developing a usability testing startup. So usability testing, it's a research methodology for user experience to improve products. And so at that startup, I was basically the UX lead. So another different role that at the same time, I'm realizing it taught a lot about different methodologies of research, understanding users, and combining what they understand on a website or in a product with what they actually do and the actions that they take. And then in 2021, I decided, okay, I'm going to go back on my own. I'm still into copywriting a lot. I want to really do that. But at the same time, I'm going to try and combine all of the stuff that I've learned from different things that I've done, right? So Conversion Alchemy, when it was born in 2021, it was my attempt at combining the copywriting with the UX side of things and also the whole psychology and decision-making processes that was behind all of the things that I've learned.
Actually, I think that's an amazing training ground, to be honest with you, right? I mean, creating something from nothing, the UX experience and the psychology. I always say marketers are, frustrated psychologists or, interested in influence, right? That's at
Yeah,
least I
yeah.
am.
So, Chris, I think one of your key fundamentals is something you call a messaging gap,
Mhm.
right? You help companies overcome this messaging gap. Can you describe just what is it that you're talking about there, and how do you recognize when you have a messaging gap?
Yeah, so messaging gap is what I define when I jump into projects. A lot of my clients, they come to me saying, "Oh, I have a copywriting problem. I need better copy because it's not converting," right? But
Mm-hmm.
when we jump in and we kind of understand what type of research we need to do, how to approach this problem, we always see that it starts at the foundation of the basis, which a lot of times it's either positioning strategy or messaging strategy. And the problem is that this gap between what the company knows internally about the product or the market and about the customers. Spoiler alert, when it comes to the customer, it's very little. And when we jump in, we kind of have to fill in the gaps in all of that and help them understand their customers way better than they already do and kind of combine what they internally know with how to express it for their ICP and their customers. And kind of the symptoms that could tell you kind of have a messaging gap is probably when you start seeing sales call that sound very different from the messaging that you have on the website. That's a very clear sign that there's some disconnect there. And it might be that the sales call convert because your salespeople are very much in contact with your customers, so they know how to speak to them. They know the objections, but then on the website you don't reflect those. Another sign is when the product team, they mostly kind of pitch and talk about the features, so there's really no value or jobs to be done clear for the people that they're speaking to. And another one, marketing. They mostly talk about the outcomes, the benefits, but there's no real technicalities, which in B2B especially, it's super important still to be able to convey the kind of the complexity of a product in a language that your recipe understands. And so there's all these different like disconnects between the product, sales, and marketing, but there's no like unifying language around the company. And so this is probably the biggest signs that we see.
I loved how you described the symptoms, and so you know what to look for. Do you find that when you work with companies, though, that they may recognize that, hey, I'm not getting the outcomes that I want, but when you tell them that the problem is that you have this gap with understanding your customers, are they ready to accept that usually, or do you have to do they already understand that that's the case, or do you have to convince them?
Yeah, so it's very much something that happens down the line. So I don't tell them instantly. So I observe. My job is basically to observe and act as a mirror, but also I don't want to be the one telling them. So what I do is first I immerse myself in the research, and I always say that 70% of my work is research, and then I present them the research, and then we have workshops together. So they, by the time that I bring that up, they already have data to back it all up. They know why. They see that they can see that when we speak together with the other teams, there's this misalignment, and so it's not something that I bring up right away when you start the project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't say your baby's ugly right off the bat.
Yes, definitely not.
And actually, I in that scenario, I have found here's what the research said, here's what our site shows. That's all you need to say, right? In some cases.
Yeah. And also, like when I jump in, I don't want to assume. I might think I might have the suspicion, but at the same time, I understand that like all these teams are super busy doing their own thing, so I don't want to assume that there's something when I still have to prove it or still have to validate the idea.
Yeah. So you just explained kind of the formula for really good copy. Highlight that again at the most fundamental level. What makes great messaging work when it works? Is it the clarity combined with the emotion? I mean, I know you got to get a little bit into the product pain points and how you solve those. What's the combination?
Yeah, so I would say it's one of those specific elements alone. I would say, as you said, it's a combination. And it's also like the way that I see it when we work on the messaging framework is being very intentional and clear on what that combination looks like. And you said like these elements: clarity, emotion, differentiation. To me, clarity usually it's associated to how we explain what the company does or what the product does, right? Emotion is more of the why it matters for customers, which are typically the benefits. Differentiation, it's explaining to customers why they should choose you, right? So what's your point of view? What's your unique methodology? Each of those, I see it as mapping it out to specific elements of the copy. As I said, the features, the benefits, and the differentiators. And I see that like the way that you split those, I see at first understanding what type of solution you are, what category you are in, and what market you're in. If, for example, you are a new solution in an established market, or you are an established solution in an established market, or established solution in a new market, all those variants basically dictate how much you should use benefits over features over differentiators. So it's kind of a split that adapts based on what solution you are, the market, and the category. And then the whole copy should respect that ratio, I would say. So it's a combination of those three elements and the right combination once you understand your audience and your ICP.
That's very interesting. I've never heard it broken down like that. And you also distinguish between what stage you are in that market. So which is I think that's very compelling.
Kind of the 4 buckets that I use is the pioneers, which is a new solution in a new category and often new market. Then there's like the challengers, which is a new solution in an established category and market. Then there's these reframers, which could be an established solution in a new category. So you kind of have to reframe the way that it's always been said. And then the final one, it's the like defenders, so established solution in an established market, which is basically all about the differentiators, like differentiating you and a little bit of benefits and some of the features.
A good old 2x2 matrix. You can never go wrong with those. I always love having those. Okay, so what is a common mistake then that people have with the value proposition? I'm going to guess that one might be, using the matrix you laid out, that you think you're in one or you're messaging to one, but you're actually in a different quadrant, right? So I'm going to guess that maybe is one common mistake. But talk about that, or maybe tell us other things also that you see a lot where people get it wrong.
Yeah, I would say there's especially when it comes to value proposition, a mistake that I see often is that a lot of companies start with saying what they do, which I don't think it works, especially because like the thing that you should do first mostly is kind of matching a conversation that people already have when they land on your website or marketing material. So
Mm-hmm.
I always say like the first job of a homepage, for example, is to match the motivation of your typical ICP when they land on a website, and then you should kind of go into the value and the features and what you actually are. So
Mm-hmm.
that's probably one of the most critical mistakes. And as you said, depends on understanding the awareness, the maturity of your market, the sophistication. So what do they know and how much they know, and what kind of language and terminology do we need to use as well to kind of show them that we understand them and that they can feel understood on the website. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest mistake that I see when it comes to value proposition, especially.
Okay, let me ask you something about website. Website messaging, I think, is very difficult because you do have different types of ICPs coming to your website. So it's difficult to write a single website copy that can hit multiple. How do you advise your clients to solve for that quandary?
So especially for when it comes to a home page, because then like you can have specific ICP pages or solution pages or use case pages that can be very specific. But when it comes to a home page and how you direct people from a home page to the other pages of a website, it's first about understanding the top ICPs that you need to address. So for that, I always try to like create 4 buckets of ICPs, which is typically you have the check signer, so who's the guy that actually signs the check. Then you have the manager, who's kind of orchestrating the decision, who's the influencer, and who's the daily user. Once we know those 4 personas, then we can start to map out the value proposition, the different secondary and primary call to action on the homepage. And then we understand, okay, where do we need to send who from the homepage? And a lot of it comes, again, from my UX background, watching usability tests. One, for example, little aspect that I think is very undervalued is, especially in B2B, when you have a lot of different personas and decision-making unit, working well with the navigation. If you start watching usability tests and even looking at for example, heat maps or user recordings of user using your website, you will see that a lot of times, especially if your homepage message is not super clear, they will head to the navigation and probably hover on one of those menus where you hide all your use cases or persona pages. And that's because a lot of people, when they jump on a website that's, especially if it's not clear, they want to try to understand if that's for them. And what they do typically is looking at the navigation and see, okay, wait, I see, okay, this is my use case, this is my persona, or maybe they don't see anything at all. And so they keep scrolling and moving back and forth between pages. And so that's a very clear sign that either you're doing things well and you understand the decision-making process, or you still have some work to do.
That's great
This
advice.
is so powerful on usability testing, right? It's actually telling you if you're directing people or if they're actually getting their problems solved, right? Because sometimes they're not, and that's what they're doing. Interesting. Now, you often help align, and I'm big on alignment, right, with product, marketing, and sales around this narrative, right? And that's kind of a juggle in and of itself sometimes. How do you speak the same language, and how do you drive that unified messaging without watering it down so much? How do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, so I mentioned research is a big part of what I do. So my main goal when I do research is first to fill in the gaps with what my clients know, their teams. So typically they have some kind of research. Maybe it's sales call recordings, or maybe they've already gathered some competitor data. So I always try to fill in the gaps with all the research that we need to collect to understand first the internal landscape, so about the product, about the teams, their point of view. Then the external side of things, which is, for me, it's the prospect and customer side, so that we can map out that transformation that needs to happen. And then the market side, the competitor. So once I have all that research, I always like to surface it and show it to my clients so they can start seeing and start getting those signals. Okay, maybe we are explaining things like the wrong way, or maybe we're not aligned with these other guys. And I always try like to share it across all teams. And as soon as possible, typically right after research, we have our positioning workshop, which is a collaborative 90-minute call, typically, where I have all the stakeholders, which could be founders, support, sales, product, marketing. And on that workshop, that's literally when we identify what they do, who they do it for, and how they do it uniquely, better, or differently. And that happens in a very simple one pager when we clearly identify, okay, what are the 3, 4 maximum unique differentiating themes that you offer. And it doesn't need to be that each of those is unique, completely unique. It's I think it's important to understand that it's the combination of those 3, 4 that makes you unique, that no one else offers. So once we clearly map those out, then you can start seeing some people saying, what if instead of that third one, we add this other aspect of a product, right? And they start having a debate. So often in these calls, it's more my clients' teams that have a conversation, and I am just observing and kind of coordinating rather than me telling them what to do, which is it's always good to see because it means that it's constructive. There's like work involved and collaboration. So that's like a very good checkpoint. And the next step right after that is typically the messaging framework. So once we decide what we do, who we do it for, and how, then how do we start saying that in our copy through different lenses, whether it's for our sales pitch, whether it's the strategic narrative, whether it's addressing those 3, 4 differentiators through different lenses, gain, loss, benefit, logical. And so working on that and sharing that document across all teams, then we go back and forth with comments, feedback, revisions. So that's kind of the second layer of alignment that happens. And by the time that we've reviewed that we need to jump into actually writing the copy for the website or anything else, then we are pretty much aligned on everything. So it's also useful for teams because they understand the process, and after I'm gone and I'm done my job, then they can take all those documents and basically come up with their own messaging, their own copy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me give you a scenario, because when you were talking, here's the situation I was thinking of. You talk to the company and they tell you, here's what we believe our core differentiators are. This is what sets us apart. But then you do the research and you listen to what customers and prospects saying, and they don't say the same things, or they never mention any of those.
Yeah.
What do you do there? How do you tell if it's just a messaging problem that they have these differentiators, but they're not doing a good job of communicating it? Or is there a more fundamental, just complete mismatch between, we think we're really good at this, but actually we're not?
Yeah, it's a very good point. So when we work on that positioning canvas again, on that workshop, I kind of pre-fill out like a secondary canvas that I don't show them typically. I keep it like separate, like just for me. And then we have the workshop and I have all of them work on it. And then once we kind of work with them on those aspects, then I bring up the stuff that I found out from research. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, sometimes it matches, sometimes it's different. Mm-hmm. But when it's kind of different, then I can bring up the points from research and kind of bring up my argument to prove why those choices should work better. And then we can obviously still like test it. We, especially at that, when we work on the messaging framework, we already have some pieces of copy that we can start putting out, whether it's in sales conversations, on sales decks. We can already start testing some of the messaging and see which one works better. Or emails with email subject lines. Those are pretty fast ways to already start testing. And then, the research and the testing obviously dictate what works best.
Yeah. The testing part, that's a good way to address that. Yeah, just actually test it and see what the results are. That's a good way.
Don't believe me, but
that's
here's
right.
what your customer said, right?
Yeah.
Alignment is the biggest challenge always in a company, if you ask me. But
certainly. Another challenge, I think, is as companies grow and you start adding more products, right? Now your messaging can get a little bit more complicated. Because it's easy to message a single solution.
Mm.
It gets a little harder when you start talking about multiple solutions. Then you have bundled messaging, you have suite messaging, all that kind of stuff. So, and then there's also a difference between product level messaging, company level messaging. Can you talk a little bit just about how you advise clients and how you help them when they start facing those types of challenges?
Mm. Yeah, so I always try to first educate them on the fact that, to me, like, it's good to keep the message simple in the sense that it's easy to use across teams and scale. But there's also a difference between simple messaging and clear messaging. To me, simple, a lot of times, especially in B2B, kind of tends to dumb down the message, especially when you're growing, kind of dilutes and becomes vague or jargony. And so I always prefer the term clear, in the sense that it's clear and specific for the right audience. That's when you're this message market fit, which for someone else could look complex, but as long as it's clear to the right audience, that's when it works, right? And so the way that I try to recommend when you scale, to always be able to be relevant to your target audience, first understand all those different ICPs that you have and map out specific content or copy for those ICPs. So have specific landing pages for each ICP, have different use case and solution pages. Another one is competitor comparison pages. So, for example, one ICP might be looking for some competitor, and so you want to address how your solution stacks up against them. And so you want to have those assets, those pages. And another one, probably like the most important, is always keep doing the research at regular intervals. Revisit your positioning at least 6 months, a year, or whenever you see big product launches or competitor. Always keep doing the research and feed it back into the whole loop, so your messaging stays fresh. And also, when you scale, you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the times. You kind of just have to refresh or slightly change an angle or reframe an idea. And so you don't have a lot of work to do. It's basically something that you do constantly. It's like working out. Once you start working out, you don't have to put all that effort each time you start, because you're basically already trained, right?
Yeah. So the next question is a little bit of a balance question. And I've actually had this one myself as with clients, right? So especially in B2B, where you have technical features, right? You know, I'm the product guy, right? Or the tech guy, right? I want so much great information on my website. And frankly, LLMs are rewarding a lot of information that is very specific, right, on the website. How do you balance good storytelling, making it emotional and not making it look like, a product spec sheet?
Yeah, so I think storytelling, it's important, but obviously it might look a bit different in B2B. You're not like actually telling a story. What you're kind of weaving, I think, is the point of view of the company, maybe the different approach, and also a good way to keep it very vivid and emotional. Sometimes it's to use as much as possible of the voice of customer. And so looking at reviews or mining those sales call transcripts or running customer interviews, all that qualitative data, and collecting as much as possible of your voice of customer, which is very sticky, vivid language that you can use across your website or marketing materials. That, I think, is what keeps the messaging very emotional, vivid, and very tangible, especially when you compare it to AI writing nowadays, which basically removes all of that variation and that vividness and the humanness, especially in B2B. So that's super important to maintain. And and to balance that out with the emotional side, more vivid, with the technicality of the product, I would say be strong on your specific point of view and the strategic narrative, which a lot of times a very good question that I use to help founders find their unique point of view or their strategic narrative. It's what drives you crazy about your industry. And that tells me a lot about why they are building what they're building. What do they see done wrong in the industry by their competitors or by their customers? What are some of the myths, misconceptions that their audience and market has? And so weaving that point of view along with that voice of customer, you'll find a very good balance. And it's also a good structure for your sales pitch and for any narrative that you have to weave into your whole messaging. And I think probably like the other point to make sure that your messaging is vivid and balanced is understanding, again, the awareness and sophistication of your ICPs. So what do they know and how much do they know? And trying to use the right form of language, which if you're already using voice of customer, you're basically already doing, because you're mirroring exactly how they speak. And so that should help you kind of grab them right away.
I'm going to have to use that question. I've never heard that one. I like it. It's what drives you crazy about your industry? That's a great way to phrase it and to get at something that is, there's something there. So I like that. Okay, so let's get into some real world examples. Can you give us an example of a project where you did kind of transform a very complex SaaS product, but help them articulate it very clearly? And I'm using clear, not simple, right? Because I like what you said there too. Clear articulation, but that clicked with the audience.
A recent project was a data integration and quality platform, so very, very technical product used by enterprise clients. And the main issue here was, yes, it was a platform, but it was also a solution in the sense that they also had a services components, like a done for you along with the platform. So it was kind of a mix. So we decided to position it as a solution. But the problem is that what the client wanted to do was kind of address what they were doing as, okay, we're going to change your entire data architecture, basically replace your current solution. And this is how we're going to help you, right? Like improve your data, keep it clean, and manage it. What we found running those interviews, both with their partner side, because they also had technology partners, and their customers, and also conducting some competitor research, review mining, all of that data. Once we collected data, we realized, okay, these guys are good at solving their problem, but what they actually are best at is actually solving a very specific data project. All of their clients called it data project, which was, for example, the trigger for one of their customers was, I don't know, someone working at a hotel started seeing in their CRM there were duplicates in their email data, right? So that there was a very specific project that they needed to solve. They didn't need to completely reinvent their data infrastructure or change all of their systems, right? They just needed that specific data project and problem solved. And so one of the most useful features of their platform, my client's platform, was that they can basically plug into a full data infrastructure and basically just solve that specific problem without having to reinvent the wheel or transform their systems. And so that's basically how we positioned it. Like, I think the main
data cleaning is always the problem.
Yes, exactly. And so we
like laundry, and nobody does it.
Yeah. And we position it exactly as get your data projects done right, or something like that. With obviously going deeper into the how and why and the different projects, and also the other positive fact was that they also had a fixed price licensing when all other solutions basically was varying based on use or different team members. So yeah, there was a very good, I think, example as far as understanding what the real triggers and motivations are and kind of matching it and using people's language, and that brought us around 20% conversion increase, alignment in teams because they knew how exactly how to speak to people and to their customers in sales calls, and faster sales cycles, because from, I think initially was 11 months sales cycle that turned into 3-4 months. So
yeah. Chris, you're doing a lot more than copywriting, right? You're doing strategic brand architecture for a lot of these companies. And then in that case, wow, I mean, that was really uncovering a whole new way to describe what you do for customers. I mean, that's a whole different aspect.
Yeah, you should pay me more.
There you go, right? Don't worry about
I
On
that.
use
left
this
turn.
podcast as social proof.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
So on psychology, let's touch on psychology a little bit because that's in your background as well. And so tell me a few things, because usually I don't associate psychological influence with SaaS businesses, but
Mm,
tell me a few things that marketers can do right now to incorporate some tactics
yeah.
that might give them the edge in psychological influence.
Yeah, so one concept, which is of psychological behavioral concept that I've learned in UX, is the idea of information scent, which is basically that is the fact that people follow the strongest scent of information when they look at a website or any user experience or journey they go through online, especially, which is all the signals or like the copy, pieces of copy, call to action, visuals that you have. They create an image, a kind of scent in the minds of these people, and the strongest they are, they're gonna follow it. So that also puts you in the frame of mind of, okay, I'm going to strategically place this copy here because I want them to follow this specific scent, let's call it. And it's especially useful when you want to set expectations and match expectations between two different pages, for example. Because if you, I don't know, you have a call to action at the top of the page, and a lot of people click it, but you set the wrong expectations. So when they get on the other side, you have a lot of signups from unqualified leads. That means that you kind of set and created the wrong information scent. So you want to first set the right expectations, have people follow that scent through the pages that you want them to consume, and then finally go through that call to action only for the right people. So it's a very intentional and deliberate way of guiding people through a website. So that's probably one that is very vivid still and still use day to day when I think about the UX of copy that I write. And the other one is like a very simple framework that I always use when I deconstruct pages, whether I'm looking at competitor pages or when I run audits. And I call it the MPG, so miles per gallon in a way. Maybe because I'm a muscle car fan. I have a 6.4 Dodge Challenger, and so
Nice.
and so I say, like, just for like just when your car you need good MPG. For messaging to be effective, you also need good MPG. And by MPG I mean, first one, the M is the match, which means you need to align with users' intent when they land on the page. You need to match their motivation. And that's, again, when we were talking about value proposition, telling them what you do rather than matching the conversation. This is the first point. First, like, always remember to match where they're coming from, whether it's from ads, from a sales call. You need to match that experience when they land on the website. The second one, the P, is the prove, which is it means that you need to reduce the doubt with any evidence, which means talking about the value that you offer, but also proving it with social proof, testimonials, case studies, videos, visual, all of that. And that's when you actually go into what you do, the value that you offer, the features. And the G, the final one, is to guide them, which means to lead them through like a clear call to action. But also after they've gone through a call to action, you need to make sure that they feel comfortable and there's low friction in completing the whole flow, which means also going through onboarding, starting to use the product. And that's why a lot of the work that we do with copy is also setting the right expectations again for when they're going to use the product and for the people who write the UX copy inside the product. We need to still make sure that we match all of that experience. And so, yeah, this framework MPG is, to me, it's always like a simple way to kind of remember the typical structure of any page. Actually, if you look at it, you should see the motivation matching, the proof with the value and social proof, and then finally guiding people through the call to action.
You know, when you were talking about the first one, information send, I wanted to ask, are you suggesting that the main parts of a website will tend to be the ones where they can get the most information? So, for instance, like places like resources where you get blogs or you get articles. Obviously, product pages if you're looking for product information. But do you tend to focus on those types of pages when you're looking at, let's say you're analyzing a new company and trying to figure out how to help them?
Now, for information, I mean any narrative specifically that guides people. So it can also be the sales copy, the sales narrative. It doesn't need to be educational resources. So it can be if you know that they are low awareness and you need to educate them before they complete some kind of action. But typically it's leading them from the landing page or home page through the, specific use case page that they need to go through, to pricing, to about page, guiding them through a specific deliberate flow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know one principle that I've always tried to adhere to, and I think you're saying the same thing, is that there has to be that match between a call to action. Like if you have a call to action that says, go here to download, but then the page you land on doesn't make it clear that here's how you download, then it's a break.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Bad friction.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even a slight second introduces friction that you don't want.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Okay. Let's maybe as a last topic here, as we're starting to kind of wrap here, but let's talk about a thing that we haven't really brought up yet. You kind of did touch on it, but every marketer is focused on this right now to some extent. So let's talk about AI. How are AI tools influencing, in your view, the developing of messaging? Clearly everybody's using them now, and in some ways they should be able to make things easier, but they're also not a cure-all.
Yeah.
What is your point of view on it? How are you incorporating it in, and how do you find it where it's effective and maybe not so effective?
Yeah. So I think like the job of a copywriter or marketer is always like with AI, it's becoming more and more about orchestrating these different tools and kind of architecting the context that you need for these tools to work well. And I use it pretty much in every stage of my process, whether it's from research to run some research or analyze research, extract themes, categorize research, or even making sense of a lot of data when you have a lot of transcripts or review data. Then the strategy also helps crystallize, brainstorm ideas, and then for the copy as well, it's a really good point if once you have the strategy documents, which for me is typically my positioning canvas, messaging framework, and value propositions. Once I have those, along with like a recap of all the research, just because if you share the entire research data that you have, it's probably too much for the AI to handle. So you want to condense that and kind of distill that into something digestible. Once you have those strategic documents in place, then you like creating a simple project, and the copy, you can get pretty good first draft copy, and then you can jump in, edit, revise, you can validate and refine as you go. But I would say if you do the research well and the strategy as well, then the writing almost comes automatically, especially now with AI, you can get really good. I wouldn't say a lot of people that I see, clients, marketers, start using ChatGPT or especially custom GPTs. But I would say try to use something a bit more advanced. Just okay, if you want to get started fast, custom GPTs are pretty useful. But a lot of those commercial chat LLMs models have their pre-training kind of installed, right? So there's some kind of influence that you get in the copy that you write. And you can see it vary between different models, whether ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or others. So one thing that I do is I use like a third-party app. For example, one is called TeamGPT. You can basically plug it into the API of, for example, Anthropic, which means you bypass first the limits of responses. You don't have those like response limits for a few hours, and you also have a much a blank slate to start from and write from that is not influenced by that pre-training that those commercial models have. And so yeah, this is one use case as well.
So I'm hearing use Claude a little bit. And I'm hearing definitely input your positioning statements and all that, right? Because, the criticism you get back is, yeah, use ChatGPT, okay, but it comes back very milquetoast, right? And it's because you're not really giving it the proper input, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the context is super important. So the output depends entirely on the inputs and how you come up with that inputs as well.
Yeah.
If
So
you
go ahead.
if you provide that level of input that you're describing, do you feel like the AI also can sound less AI? Because that's the other challenge, right? It feels like a lot of the stuff that's written, you can tell, oh, this is written by AI, it wasn't written by a human,
Yeah.
right? But you're searching for the human touch, right? Do you think that helps, or is it still there's just something still to a human editing it?
No, I think that helps a lot. And also another thing that I do is going back to voice of customer. I call this voice of customer injection. So basically, once I have some basic copy that I think is good, maybe I see that it's not emotional or not vivid enough. Then what I do, I have this voice of customer document. I paste it in a chat and basically tell the AI, see if you can weave in some of this language into this copy without changing the angle, without changing the proof, the value, the pain points that we are using, but just see if you can make it a bit more vivid and strong, right? Using this voice to customer. And then you're basically, again, mirroring how your customers speak.
Good. Okay, last question, and then I'll let you go. You said that in some cases you're seeing a 30% increase and sometimes doubling the conversion rates of some of your copy. That's pretty dramatic and exciting, right?
Yeah.
So is it and what I heard you just say is you spend most of your time in the early stages in the strategy of the business and getting the foundation correct. How much of the iteration of copy comes after tweaking and learning and that kind of thing afterward? Because if I'm parsing out your time, it feels like most of your time is spent in strategy and getting that correct. Then you actually utilize AI to help you get to first draft or so, right?
Yeah.
And then some iteration happens.
Yeah. So, like, if I think about what I was doing the first few years that I started without AI, I would say probably like my writing time was cut in half now with AI. So if it took me, I don't know, 2-3 weeks to write 10, 20 pages of copy, now it takes me half, like 1-2 weeks maximum.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Chris. How do people get a hold of you if they want to get an audit or learn more?
They can find me on my website, conversionalchemy.net. I have a newsletter if you want to sign up and keep in touch, or I'm mostly on LinkedIn, so sharing about this, AI, messaging, copy, and SaaS.
That's great. I love the principles that you've discussed on here. I resonate a lot with them. So really appreciate you sharing that. Again, it's conversionalchemy.net. Thank you, Chris Silvestri, for joining us. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Barb and Alec.